Good evening and welcome to PBS Fort Wayne and to our show here that's called Life Ahead. I'm the host of the show, but the star is the guest that's coming up here that I'll be introducing in just a moment. Let me tell you a little bit about Life Ahead. If you've not watched us before, you should be. It's every Wednesday night at 7:30, and each week we have a different topic and different guests. And the intent is to try to give you education and information that will help you in choices you have to make in your life ahead. That's the title of the show. And tonight, I'm really excited about our topic. Last night, I watched a special documentary, a 2-hour documentary on PBS, and we're going to follow up with a discussion about that documentary with Cancer Services of Northeast Indiana. And with me tonight, I'd like for you to meet Marsha Haffner. Marsha, thank you for coming with us tonight.
Thank you for having us.
And we're going to be talking about caregivers. Some of you watching might be a caregiver for a family member, or perhaps you're doing that as a profession. And we're going to talk about what the life is like for a caregiver and some important things you need to do for yourself and what you can do if it's something you would be interested in volunteering or working for. Okay, Marsha, big topic then that we have to do tonight. Talk to me a little bit about the Cancer Services and how caregivers fit into that. And now this is of Northeast Indiana.
Correct.
And Marsha's title, by the way, kind of an important one. She's the Vice President of Mission Fulfillment. So let's talk about the mission first.
Sure, yeah. So Cancer Services is committed to helping improve the quality of life for people with cancer and their families.
Yeah.
Through mostly compassionate practical assistance, but also through wellness care. So whatever we do for a person with cancer, we'll also walk with their family members through that.
Yeah, okay. Do you have an actual building or facility?
We do. We are located on Mutual Drive on the north end of town near Brotherhood Park.
Oh, Brotherhood. Okay. Yeah, you had me stumped with what's it called?
Mutual Drive.
Mutual Drive. I had not heard of that one, but I know where Brotherhood. You can see that from I-69.
You can. You can kind of see our building when you go by there too.
I will purposely look for it.
We also did open a site in Warsaw last year. So we cover the 11 counties of Northeast Indiana, and kind of decided to go a little bit towards our outer limits so that we're closer and more available.
You're closer to LaGrange, Steuben, Noble,
all of that.
DeKalb, everything that's up north. Okay, and this is a not-for-profit.
Yes.
So what you're doing for people is for the people getting the services is a volunteer service.
It's a professional service. There's a full staff there that provides services. We do have volunteers who help with some different ways for people, including like transportation to treatment, those kinds of things that are volunteer roles. But most of our services are delivered through our paid staff.
And because you were talking about servicing people with cancer in all ways, whether it's daily things at their home, maybe going to somebody's house and doing whatever, fixing meals or cleaning or giving them meds or services. You help them arrange that.
We can help with those referrals. If those are the things that they need, we'll help them find those services in the community. We don't provide those services ourselves, but we have advocates on staff who are kind of well-versed in what all the resources are that are available to folks, and they'll help them access those things.
I'm so glad to hear that, Marsha, because when things happen to a family, it's often by surprise.
Yes.
And, you may not know what to do or where to even start. And I've had this happen in my own family or extended family where somebody's come out of a major surgery and they're going to be incapacitated for a number of months. And it's like, where do you go? Who do you call to get some help and some services? You mentioned, as we were talking earlier, Council of Age and Aging is a good referral center.
Yes, here in Northeast Indiana, that covers most of that is Aging and In-Home Services.
Yes.
Yep, they do a lot of support for caregivers, specifically as well as the person that they're caring for, and we'll arrange a lot of services with those folks.
Right, right. So again, are you going to meet with the family of the cancer patient, or with whom?
Yes, we work with anybody who's involved in the situation, really. So anybody providing support to the person with cancer, the person with cancer themselves that we
Yeah.
provide support to, and then many of our services are intended for the family as well. So we work with kids whose parents have cancer, or we work with kids who have cancer, we work with caregivers, spouses. They can access our supportive counseling, our mental health counseling, our relaxation massage, our wellness care.
Wow, you have a lot of services.
We have a caregiver support group. We have journaling groups for caregivers. Lots of different things. They can come to yoga or Tai Chi.
Oh my goodness,
So,
it makes me want to start joining up here. And I do want to remind you all about that documentary. Again, that's on PBS, and it will be available throughout the summer on Passport, PBS on Passport, and it's just called Caregiving. It is definitely worth watching. And again, it's 2 hours, but it goes really fast. I would say, in watching the show, and Kathy Edwards, who's here at PBS, told me about it last week, so that I would watch last night. And she said, get your Kleenexes ready, because there are parts of it that are really tear-jerking and really get into your heart when there are stories about caregivers and some of the work that they're doing with a patient, often a family member. And it's very moving, but it's very telling, too.
yes, it's a difficult role. They're really stepping up to a plate here.
You talked about yoga and massages and all kinds of things, which leads me to talking about taking care of the caregiver. Let's speak to that, Marsha.
Yes,
Why is that important?
right. Well, we're all familiar with that put your oxygen on first metaphor, right?
Yeah.
So it's very much like that, right? You have to have the resources before you can really rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
Right? It's a challenge to be there for somebody like that. And so you have to make sure that you've got gas in your tank, right?
Well, I was surprised, maybe a little surprised through some of the stories, how being a caregiver, and again, depending on the patient and what their needs are or how severe their situation is, it can be not only emotionally challenging, but taking a lot of time, taking a lot of heart and compassion, which brings to even into mental issues if it's a family member especially, and physical. You have to be pretty strong to take care of a lot of things. And there was one story I was particularly interested in, Marsha, and the documentary followed a number of different people, but there was one young woman whose father had cancer, and she took him back home to her house. As I recall, I think he was in hospice for a while, and then they said no, they declined him being in hospice.
Yeah.
So she took care of him at home, and even her husband was helping as a caregiver. But she said each morning she would get up and start her routine as a caregiver, and you watched her go through these things. She bathed him, and then we did exercises, and she dressed him, and did all of those physical needs. And she said then we lifted him, and they had some kind of equipment to lift him from the bed into like a lazy boy or some kind of recliner. And she said then I could sit down next to him, and I could move from being a caregiver to a daughter.
Yeah.
Because there's a definite distinction between the two. And she said if I put my daughter hat on while I'm doing the physical things with him, I get too emotional.
It's too emotional, and that change in roles is so significant, right? You want to have some continuity with your life as you knew it.
Sure.
And so being able to step back into that daughter role and maintaining your identity as a daughter is just really important, and as a father, and not just be a caregiver. So that being able to provide the care and switch back into the personal role and not the paraprofessional.
Do you have any recommendations how people might do that if they're caregivers at home that aren't yet involved with your organization?
Yes, sure. The idea of maintaining that relationship as the priority it often requires folks to have some just good habits, right? And so she was talking about her routine, right?
Yeah.
And how she could, through that routine, she was mindful of which role she was in at any given time. And so keeping that mindfulness about which role you're in right now and what it means to have a personal relationship with your dad, in this case, right?
I loved one of her comments. She said, 'cause she was doing total caregiving. I mean, she would, with the morning routine, she even combed his hair and she did everything she could to make him feel good physically and about himself. And you could see that his level of confidence would rise. And she mentioned that while she loved her dad before, being a caregiver for him, she grew to love him even more.
Yeah, yes. And I believe that was the same person in the documentary that talked about that giving care and receiving care is healing in itself, right?
Is
that
healing.
Giving and receiving care is healing.
For
and
both.
For both people.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
What do you think that is, that caregivers also get a benefit? It's not just a routine or you do it because you have to, but
Right.
why do you think that caregivers are benefiting?
Right, especially with family members like that. Anytime that we can give or receive love,
Yeah.
really, it's
Yeah.
a very loving action, right? Really loving activity. It helps us be whole. I mean, that's who we are as people, right? We're in relationship.
Yeah.
And so whenever we can express that relationship, it's just going to be healing.
Yeah, and that's kind of a beautiful thing. Now, let's say people that are watching us tonight here on PBS and people that watch the documentary decide that, hey, that might be something that I would like to do. I don't have a family member that's sick, but I would love to be a caregiver for others. How can they get involved, Marsha? What's the first step?
Well, I guess that depends on to what degree they want to do that, right? So they can volunteer at an organization
Yeah.
to do different things that might be very time limited and very, very specific. If they really wanted to get involved with caregiving on a professional level, there's lots of home health care organizations that they could go to work for. But if they really wanted to do that as a support person, they could, I would say, hook up with a nonprofit organization that might be able to have a role for them.
Yeah, okay, and again, I do want to mention that that's Cancer Services of Northeast Indiana, and where you could call. Again, what is it, Council of Aged and Aging?
Aging
that
and
could
Home Services.
Make some references for you.
Yep.
We do have a call coming in from Julie. Julie, thank you so much for watching us here on PBS. And Julie says this, I'm going to read her question to you.
Okay.
What are some simple ways caregivers can take care of themselves on a day-to-day basis?
Right.
Okay, so we get to take care of ourselves if we're a caregiver.
You bet.
What are some ways we can do that?
That. So, first of all, I would say that caregiving is not a time to be alone, right? Caregiving is a time to include other people.
Yeah.
So any ways that you can find time to spend with people that are supportive of you is very valuable on a day-to-day basis to kind of refresh that well. But also to help, most of our support system wants to be involved in whatever way they can to support us, but they don't necessarily know what that is. So being able to talk to and know who you can turn to, but have a very specific ask for them. Could we go out and get some ice cream? Would you be able to cut my lawn for me? Whatever those kinds of things are. We want to help most of the time, but we don't necessarily know the best way or what their needs are.
Right, exactly. And again, important, as you mentioned, to have communication with the family and with that person who's ill, if they're able to tell you what their needs are or what feels good or enriches their situation.
Yeah. So you want to be, I think as a caregiver, you want to be mindful of mind, body, spirit.
Mind,
right?
body, spirit. Take care of all three.
Take care of all three. Take care of your mind, take care of your body, take care of your spirit, and find the activities that can support that. I listed a lot of them at Cancer Services. If you're involved with, if you're a caregiver for someone with cancer, That's a great spot. And you know, your engagement with people is going to kind of support all of those things, right? So
Sure.
coming to things where you have physical activity with other people is a great opportunity.
You know, one of the things, Marsha, as I was watching the film last night, that I was going to say surprised me, but I don't know, maybe it really didn't, was how many young people are affected.
Yeah.
And I believe the statistic was something like there are 6 million children,
Yeah.
10 and under, that have to become a caregiver for somebody in the
Right.
family. You know, maybe they're the only one at home, and their mom has cancer, and so they're fixing food, they're taking care of her.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes that becomes part of their identity too, right? And
Yeah.
that's how families are, right? There's a give and take in families. This is just a different kind of give and take that's happening, where they have to step up in a different way. You know, the young man in the film.
That one got me.
He was a beautiful kid, wasn't he? And the way that he interacted with his mom was just kind of precious. But he also was able to engage with her just as his mom.
Yeah.
You know, climb into the bed with her.
Climbed into bed.
Have a conversation about what his day at school was
Yeah.
like, right? Yeah.
It was beautiful, and that was after she kind of started getting dinner, but then got exhausted and had to tell Dad, her husband,
Yep.
and the young man, you know, I'm going to bed now. And so
Yeah.
she went back to bed, and then,
Yeah.
and the son, I don't know, maybe junior high age-ish or
Maybe.
something like that. He just climbed right in bed with her. He stroked her arm. She had him move her arm because
Yeah.
it was kind of stuck under a pillow.
Yep.
And he just did that so lovingly.
Yep.
And then they just laid there face to face, and she asked him, "What did you do at school today?" And
Yeah.
that was really a beautiful interaction. And then he said that was his norm.
Yes.
He didn't think that it was unusual
Nope,
at all.
that was the way life was for him. You know, and I really appreciated for them too, how they didn't just focus or center or talk about her disability
cancer.
or
Yeah.
what was happening for her, that they talked about the things of normal life.
Yeah.
Right. They got to, and which is so important in those relationships, that it isn't all about the deficit that's happening there, but you can talk about the things that are the joys in your life, or just your normal day-to-day interactions out there that a mother and son would talk about.
Wonderful, wonderful. One of the things I would be interested in was your impressions about feelings that a caregiver might go through. Again, in addition to maybe being physically tired, but you know, we've gotten recommendations on how you deal with that. But what about emotions?
Yes.
Maybe people feel guilt
Yeah.
because they feel like imposed upon by the person that they have to take care of, or that it eats into time that they want to have with their own immediate family. How do you deal with those kind of feelings?
Sure. First of all, I would say that range of feelings is pretty broad,
Yeah.
and that probably all of them are normal and typical. So you're not standing out on your own if you're going through those things. That's really a normal thing to feel, either some guilt for self-care. You know, a lot of people, the caller, Julie, who called in earlier and said, what can I do on a day-to-day basis? And part of that is allowing yourself, right, to do that with, and even if there's a sense of a little bit of guilt that goes with that, that's normal. You've got to, you move through that. I would suggest having some good, even little thoughts or sayings that you have for yourself to move through those kinds of guilt feelings, right? Of, my loved one would want me to take care of myself.
That's true.
Those kinds of things that are, I am proud of myself for stepping up and taking care of this, right? And so having some ways to affirm yourself when you're feeling guilty about either the way that you feel or the fact that you might be stepping away to take care of yourself. You mentioned something that was similar to, I'm going to say, resentment, right?
Resentment.
Yeah, a little bit of that, which is not uncommon either, but something creeped into your life and changed it, right?
It does, yeah. I mean, one person sick can, throw things off for 6, 7, 8 people or whatever the family is, especially the immediate family.
And it changes your relationships, and it changes, you know, and I think it's important as a caregiver to recognize that the situation stinks, but not to resent the person, right? You can resent what happened, you can resent the situation, but try, you know, the ability to separate out resenting the person that you're caring for versus the situation that brought you here, I think is helpful for people.
Good. That's good, because, you know, if you started feeling resentment toward that person that you're taking care of, then you know, you have to think, and separating it, like you say, that Mom didn't choose to have cancer. It's not her fault.
Right.
You know, and she, you know, I'm separating Mom from the medical diagnosis, and don't be mad at her.
Right.
Let's say we could be mad at the doctor, or you know,
or
anything else.
Yeah, any kind of situational thing, right? That popped up around that. It's all there. I think people often have such a strong sense of loss. In these situations too, either the loss of what they thought the future was going to look like, or the loss of kind of their own identity sometimes. You know, I'm now, since I'm a caregiver, maybe I'm not a soccer player anymore, or maybe I'm not, you know, so those roles or that identity can be a loss that's in there too, and just a loss of the kind of future that you thought you might have. So one of the ways we deal with loss is to find hope. Right, to find hope. And we don't want to have the kind of wishful thinking sort of hope, right? Like,
you mean like this is going to go away?
Exactly.
Or,
or I'm going to wake up tomorrow and it didn't really happen, or you know, all of these things, or it's going to go on away on its own. Those things are wishful thinking, right? But something to really rest your hope on might be something like, my family is going to stay strong through this, or get stronger through this, or a hope that, you know, when this is all said and done, you know, I'm going to have the peace knowing that I did everything I could.
Right. There would be nothing worse than, you know, they end up passing away, and then you feel guilty because you didn't help, or didn't help very much.
So you have that thing that you hang your hopes on, and then that can help guide you right through that kind of lost feeling of. Because hope is so important to get through anything that's difficult, right?
Oh, such good advice. And I do want to remind you to take a little time. Again, it's 2 hours, but it goes really fast because the film is done so well. But it will be available on PBS Passport throughout the summer. Just ask for, what is it called? Just Caregiving?
Yep.
Caregiving. That's the title of the film. So you could just, you know, tell your on-demand or whatever type of a service you have that's what you'd like to seek, and it's really, really worth it. And although we're talking about cancer right now, it applies to so many things.
Absolutely.
And I think that the film even touched on some situations where a family member had Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And that was a loss to the rest of the family. It's like, who is this new person? I don't know them anymore, and they don't know me.
Right.
And that's a very challenging caregiving.
It is, and so you're connected to the past, right, more than the present,
of who they used to be.
Who they used to be. And for some people, holding on to that memory of the person that they would have, you know, that they knew they were committed to, and who was committed to them.
True.
And whether they are present in the same way, inside they're the same person, even if they can't express that.
And that's hard to hang on to when this person doesn't act the same way, but it's important to mentally hang on to that, and that'll help get you through it. You know, I also heard a statistic that there are 10,000 people a day that turn 65. 10,000, 65 and older, which leads to maybe the lifetime or life era where they start to have major issues.
Have more needs.
Have more needs. Thus, caregiving is needed more often. In our last minute or two that we have here, Marsha, what advice would you give to people that are interested in caregiving, you know, what they can get out of it, why it would be a good service to provide?
You know, there is something about giving in general, right? That when we give of ourselves in general, there's always something that comes. It might not come in the immediate moment, but eventually there's either reward,
you will receive.
You shall receive, right? And so in that regard, our time is coming, right? I mean, the documentary talked about Rosalind Carter's quote that you're either
that was beautiful.
needing care, will need care, or you're a caregiver.
Yeah, or 4 things.
It's one of those 4 things.
It's going to happen.
So yeah, I think it's participating.
Yeah. Marsha, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Again, that's Marsha Haffner. And I appreciate all of you being with us tonight here on Life Ahead. I hope you'll join us right here next Wednesday night at 7:30. You also can see this show on YouTube. Just ask for that on your TV service. And lots of ways you can watch this episode and lots of other Life Ahead episodes.
Very nice.
Good night.
The preceding program on PBS Fort Wayne was made possible in part by
Cancer Services of Northeast Indiana, walking side by side with families on their cancer journey, providing emotional support and practical assistance for yourself or another. cancer-services.org.